Hello, howdy, welcome back. My name is Mary, and today we are discussing the movie Portrait of a Lady on Fire. This movie came out in 2019 and tells the story of two young women who are brought together by chance. One of them has to paint a portrait of the other to be sent off to Milan to her future husband. Meanwhile, they have a romance along the way, and the movie is known for being not only artistically shot, but also meaningful in the fact that it is a queer film and just a gorgeous storyline. So, without further ado, I want to get into the video, but wanted to mention that this is the first of a video series that I'm super excited about called College Creatives Discuss. And I wanted to bring together a lot of my college friends to film and record all of the cool conversations that we have about art. I'm really interested in what it means to be a creative person and to really take on that label. So this is kind of an experiment to see how different types of art are received in different minds that take them in. So thank you so much for being here, and please let me know if you like the series, and yeah, let's get into it.
If you want to introduce yourself, do it. You don't have to. Or we could just get into the first question.
So I'm Levi. I just recently graduated as a design, arts and technology, and art with an emphasis in digital art major from Bellarmine, where we all go. And yeah, I'm creative too, for sure. And I'm really proud and happy to have friends who I can talk about other friends who I can talk about creative things with and stuff that we get excited and inspired by, like Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
I am Mayara, but I go by Maya. And let's see, I go to Bellarmine. I am also a senior in the same year as Mary, and I'm a sociology major. I'm not quite as creative as these two, but probably twice as angry about the world, so I bring that to the table. And yeah, I was born in Brazil and raised in Germany, and now I live in the US, and I'm confused as hell about life.
I actually didn't hear about it until the day before it started streaming on Hulu. And I saw somebody post about it on Twitter, I think. And I don't think they just posted like the title and then a screen cap from the movie. And it was the painting of her with her dress on fire. I was like, okay, what the hell is this? Because I'm already interested without knowing anything about it. And so immediately I Googled it and found out that it was, a movie based on this painter, but it was also like a queer love story. So I was like, okay, that's all it takes. Like, I'm totally sold. I saw an article where it said that it's like a true representation of queer love.
Mm.
And I wasn't exactly sure what that meant, because I think, I don't know, it feels like queer love can be a lot of different things. But I mean, after watching it and talking about it with a couple people, I understand what that article meant. So yeah, that was my first, that was my preconception going into it.
I heard about the movie from Levi. So yes, basically Levi and I were talking shortly before the quarantine started, and we had mentioned that, we want to watch some more eccentric movies, and he gave me this recommendation. It took me a while to end up watching the movie just because for a while I forgot about it, and then you brought it up again. But the reason I was really into this movie, well, first off, I really like French movies. I have a bit of a soft spot for them. But the whole thing sounded very interesting because I recently started getting into painting portraits, and it's just so different than painting anything else. Like there's a whole story to be told in every portrait, so I was really into that idea.
What do you think is the purpose of like putting queer films in the box of queer films? Levi, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah. I don't know. The first thing that I thought of when you asked that question was, I think that giving it the label like a queer film sort of makes it like, I don't know if this makes sense, like accessible in a way, because, has that label, then I don't know, like as a queer person, I look for stuff that is labeled like sometimes I go to like the LGBT section on Netflix, you know, and
Mhm.
I want to see some gay shit today, you know? And
Yeah.
I like that it's labeled that because it's like, I don't know, it's like representation, I guess, but also it like allows me to like easily find that and become a part of it, you know?
Another reason that this, you're right, has to be seen as a queer love story is because my perspective on this love story was so different. Because I'm used to these love stories where it'll work out, right? It's
Mhm.
like obvious that it'll work out. And this is a love story that 100% tells you from the very get-go, it can't work out.
Mhm.
And the whole time I was thinking, surely to God, they're going to run away together. Surely to God, surely to God. And it's like, it's not an option. But we're not used to that because I only watch straight love stories most of the time. So I'm used to the fact
Yes.
that people run away together. Here, it was not even remotely an option. So I don't think I even saw the irony until she actually got married. It like shocked me. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe she's actually doing this.
You know, they were obviously like very in love with each other, but not for a second did they ever consider that that could be like an actual thing, like not even an option, because I mean it's like 18th century France. You know, I talked to an older gay person who was like, you know, that's what it was like for me, you know, when I was younger, and was for many people up until kind of recently, was that, you know, we would have those feelings, but it was not like we were actually allowed to do anything about them. And even if we did do something about them, it's not like they could actually become like a reality because it was too dangerous. There's that scene where her mother, Eloise's mother, is leaving, and Eloise has just agreed to like pose for the portrait. And her mother says, they're like in the scene, it's both of them right here. And she says, say goodbye like when you were little. And Eloise is like, and just goes
Yeah.
and does that. What do you think? I want your y'all's thoughts on that.
That scene to me highlighted how like their dynamic was just so messed up. Like the sister had died. Like the family was messed up. She like didn't she was misbehaving herself. It just seems like to me that highlighted like, okay, the conflict still exists here, and that this is like not a like the mom leaving, like Maya and I talked about the other day, like the mom leaving opens up an entirely new like toolbox of like everything to do.
Yeah, and there was also this aspect of the beginning when the mother is talking about her own portrait that was painted of her when she got married, and she said something along the lines of she didn't know what to expect or something like that, and then she walked in the house and the portrait was already hanging there, and she said, and I was just looking at myself, and there was something there. I thought that scene was so interesting that she was almost implying like reality wasn't hitting her until she saw herself hanging on that wall. And what do you guys think that meant?
Well, to me, it's almost like it's like whether you are into your guy that you're marrying or not, or whether you really do have this like very like horrible feeling like you are a homosexual woman who's like being forced to marry a guy, like whether you have that or not, it does seem like there are two women present with every single woman that goes through this process. Like there's the woman that she is supposed to be, that she's supposed to grow into being, that is what is embodied in the portrait. And then there's the person that is like actually existing, who's the woman that is like facing doubt or facing literally like her childhood and past. Like I wonder to what extent you would even like reference your past or like anything in like the civil society that was like life after you got married. The mom seemed to like pride herself on her portrait, like she looked really good, or that it was like this turning point, like almost like becoming like a woman, like an adult person. But then there was also like the portrait is not going to be like at all really representative of like the young spirit of the woman. So it just seemed like there was a duality with like all of these women.
Well, yeah, that's very interesting. I like what you brought up with the duality of the woman, and I'm gonna keep this in mind and think about this later. But I was just wondering how far this duality goes nowadays. When obviously we're not having portraits done to get married off, but I think that there's still this duality, maybe in all people, but obviously I only know of the experience of a woman, really. I'm gonna think about that. I really like that.
Any other scenes of mention? Obviously, the ghost scene. Did y'all want to touch on that?
Yeah, if you guys could, because I didn't understand it.
Like, I was freaked out too, and I thought she was honestly in her nightgown.
Me too. That's what I thought. I thought that was a different room, and she was coming out of that room. And I was like, wait, which room is she in? I was confused about that.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what it was at first glance either. Like, especially after watching it last night, I think it was a wedding dress because in those visions or those figures, she's wearing that white dress and it's like kind of blocky right here. And then in the end scene where they're saying goodbye, she's wearing the same dress, like her mother is putting her in that white dress. And so I think it was like a wedding dress, you know. And that figure only appears after Marianne and her have like made out. And so I think that maybe it means like Marianne is just like, you know, it's constantly in the back of her head now that like it means more that she's painting this portrait because like once it's finished then she's married off, you know, like it's done. And I think that maybe the visions are like maybe just her kind of like being reminded of that reality.
If I remember, one of the times, the first time, maybe the second time of when she saw the ghost in that wedding dress was when she had kissed Eloise for the first time and she thought that she had scared her off, right? And she walks up the steps and she sees that ghost. And it was like she was reminded of what is ultimately the fate, what she's facing here. And she's like, well, this is how it's going to end. I might as well go and apologize. I might as well go fight for it. Because there's this transcendent desperation throughout it all that makes their love even more intense, you know, because she knows how it's going to end and there's nothing she can do. So there's a really stupid saying that I live by. It's from Smallville. And somebody said, when nothing you do matters, the only thing that matters is what you do. And I thought that really stuck out in that movie because nothing she does will change that she's going to get married. So the only thing that matters is what she does now until she gets married. So I was wondering if that had something to do with that.
I'd forgotten that there was that scene because I was going to ask, like, when was it that you think that like the audience recognized that irony? And for me, it didn't hit me until that scene. I wasn't like, it's really ironic that they're falling in love because isn't she just going to go off and get married with this painting? It's like, I wasn't thinking that at all.
And then at the end, when they're seeing each other again, I'm like, this is when they're going to run off together. No, they can't. Like, Maya, get your shit together.
Yeah, what was so sad to me is that Marianne saw Eloise twice more in her whole life. Mm-hmm. And that the first time was just in a painting, right? It was in that painting where she was holding the page to that book.
And can I just mention, just because you're talking about that scene where she sees a painting, right before that, she is standing over in front of her own paintings, and one guy walks up and he's like, wow, your dad's doing a good job. And she's like, well, actually, it's mine. And I was like, oh, bitch. Like,
your dad's doing a great job. I know.
It was her dad's. And she's like, nah, it was this bitch right here.
So there seemed to be, and this might have just been me, like, if I met a woman who was like this in that time, I mean, I would have been attracted to her. So when they first meet and they're on the beach and on like one of their first walks or like maybe the second or third, when they're like actually talking, Marianne says that she is like a painter or like does art or something. And Eloise is like, oh, well, like, when are you going to like get married or whatever? And she's like, I'm not. And I was just thinking about like the dynamic between them. Like, would Eloise have ever been happy appearing to the world as like a single like spinster, just like career woman? Would she ever have been okay with that? Like, if they were to run away together, would they have even been happy? Because it seems like Eloise was so much more socialized to be like, just follow the path, and like maybe even someone of her status wouldn't have even known where to start, like living a life as like a single woman.
I don't know. I mean, there was that one scene where Eloise is like, I really like music, but I've never actually like experienced it before. And Marianne plays her that song, and it seems like she's just like totally in awe that she not only knows of that piece, but also knows how to play it, you know? And I don't know, when I saw that, I thought that maybe Eloise was like kind of admiring of that side of Eloise, or of Marianne. Like, I don't know, it seemed to me like she was kind of like interested in being like kind of like a single woman who was like well-rounded and not just like, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I also think that when they first meet, when they go for their first walk, Eloise is walking ahead of her and acting like real suspicious. She starts running towards the cliff, and like Marianne thinks that she's gonna throw herself off the cliff like her sister, and then she's just out of breath and she says, "Oh, I've been waiting years to do that." She just wanted to run, and it was just really showing how sheltered she was and how this is a wild spirit that didn't get to have the space that she needed for herself. And so I honestly, I can't tell when she said that she's not gonna get married. I can't tell if there was admiration there. Because part of me also thought that Eloise didn't buy it, that she was like, everybody gets married. You're going to get married anyway, you know? I don't know. There was probably like a mix of emotions. She may have been the only woman that she's ever met who straight up said, I ain't getting married. Yeah, and I mean, you're right about what your dad said, that they probably sold everything in the house and that they were getting ready to move and everything. And they may have been broke. And there may have been a financial aspect to this, that if she doesn't marry this guy, her family doesn't get money, financial security. Her mom doesn't get to move back to Milan, which she loved so much. So it's not just about her. She's dragging down her mom too if she does that. And yeah, her relationship with her mom was like one of a lot of guilt and conflict. I think it was an interesting relationship.
Okay, let's talk about the drug usage and what we thought about the physical scenes, intimate scenes.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and share really quick what I read about it, because
yes,
as soon as I saw that they were smearing drugs in their armpits, I was like, I want to do that. So I looked at I was like, drugs in armpit, and the first thing that came up was this movie. So I don't know if there's actually any drugs you can smear in your armpit, but apparently the director of the movie stated that he didn't, I don't know if he didn't want a sex scene or if there just wasn't a possibility for a sex scene, but he wanted something erotic, and he came up with the idea of the armpit before he came up with the idea of the drugs. The drugs just kind of like filled a hole there, and I thought it was interesting, and I was wondering why somebody may have chosen not to do a sex scene in this movie. What do you guys think then?
To me, the scenes that were shown were ones that just showed like how tender it was between them. Like, I don't know if I would have gotten anything from like them making out and like feeling each other up. Like, all I would have gotten from that was like, oh, well, they're like sexually repressed. And it's like, well, so was everyone at the time, and like definitely like queer people at the time.
I think it also has to do with like the movie isn't really about like the relationship isn't just about sex, you know. It's like this really deep, meaningful relationship, and so having like these explicit sex scenes aren't really, it's not really necessary, you know. Like, it wouldn't do anything for the plot except for like I don't know, you know, like we exactly, like we got everything we needed to know from just the scenes that we saw, you know.
I'm trying to remember this movie. I cannot believe that I'm forgetting this movie, but there's a very famous 1940s movie, I think. 1940s, maybe 1950s. And it was like the first interracial, like white and black relationship on screen. And they weren't allowed to show any romance or sex on TV, so they couldn't even kiss. And there was this one scene where I think it was Harry Belafonte, but I'm not going to say it was him.
I think I know about this movie. Yeah.
It's something in the sun. I cannot believe that I forgot. This is a classic movie, but I will find it here in a minute. But basically, he's talking to this white woman, and they're having a very like sweet relationship, talking here and there. And he has a bottle of water, and he offers it to her, and she drinks from the bottle of water. Like, I'm gonna act like I'm using it. She drinks from the bottle of water. She hands it back to him, and he twists it around a little bit to make sure he drinks exactly from the spot where she drank. And it was like this implied first kiss, right? And it was an incredibly sensual scene. And I was thinking about, you know, sometimes when you don't have the direct kiss, it really highlights how central it is, how much creativity somebody has to put into it, how much you thought about how unique your love is. And the scene with, the armpits, I was like, that's very intimate. I'm not gonna let everybody into my armpit. It's a bit awkward. But these two, they were just so close. And then there was that scene where, of course, Marianne has been painting Eloise the whole time. And then Eloise says, well, I don't have a painting of you. And it was just, it was just very unique that it wasn't just about seeing the other person. You had to see yourself too. Like all of these emotions and these actions were so shared.
It makes me think about when, like, because how I took the scene was, it's positioned, obviously the mirror is tastefully positioned. You can like see Eloise's like nude body, but it's positioned like one for like, you don't want to like show that part on camera, I guess, but also like to me it was that because she had talked a big game about like, well, Marianne, like when did you first have sex, or like when were you in love, and basically that the first person to touch that part of Eloise was Marianne, and that was what was reflected in that scene. Like that's what I had, like it was almost imprinted on her body that like Marianne was the first, like, in
a way they were childish together, like they were just fresh souls, like newborn after having lost their virginity like that. Like very sweet.
One thing that I really liked was when Marianne like comes to her room and Eloise is standing there and they start like kissing, and Eloise is like, do all lovers feel as if they're inventing something?
Yeah, and y'all know me, I talk to the TV when I watch movies. So I was like, yes, girl. I was like, yes, we all feel like it because in a way you are inventing it. These two emotions, this version of yourself has never existed. You are inventing it.
Anyway, can we touch on femininity and body hair? I basically just want a clip of Maya saying what you said about body hair in the movie looking very feminine, and that was the first time that we had seen body hair looking feminine.
Yeah, Mary and I were talking about this because, of course, we have each our issues with body hair. And I mean, just like any other person, and especially women, everything that I did was always compared to a man. So body hair was always portrayed as like something very masculine. And in this movie, of course, both women didn't shave their armpits. I didn't get to see much else, but mainly like their armpits were really emphasized. And I didn't think of it as like dirty or masculine or anything. In fact, I thought that it was like very feminine because it was just so raw. Like they didn't wear any makeup and they had these thick eyebrows and they had their armpits like that. And there was just something like so pure and raw about the way that they loved themselves and loved each other. And I wanted to mention one more thing I forgot to say, but Mary and I were talking about this on the phone the other day, that now there's this trend these last few years that not only you have to shave your armpits, but because you shave your armpits, the skin underneath your arm tends to be a little darker, right? And now there's like all these recipes for bleaching and lightening your skin under your armpits. And I'm just like, can we please stop talking about armpits? Like, I've never been on a date where a guy was like, you seem great, but can you lift your arms? Like, that is just weird as hell, especially like the look thing. And I'm just really sick of it because there's no point to it.
Anyway, here's to growing out our armpit hair, right?
You should do an episode about puberty and what puberty is like for men and women if you're talking about body hair.
You should do a puberty series. Okay, ending scene.
Did y'all cry?
No, I didn't cry.
No. This is where I feel not legit. Did you cry, Levi?
I didn't cry, but God, I wish I could have, because that was a lot.
Well, what I wanted to say about this, and this is the only thing I have to say because I was really proud of it. I said it on the phone with Maya the other day. It seemed as though the music was like the second character in that scene. And that was the first time I've ever seen music act as like a character like that. That this was the only thing that the audience was focusing on for like literally 10 minutes. And it didn't feel that long or whatever, but like that, like there were two characters in there. Marianne is over here, like she really is present in the room, but the presence that Eloise is getting of Marianne really comes like solely from the music.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I didn't think of it like that, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's interesting because in that very scene, you're right. Marianne even says, I saw her, but she didn't see me. And instead, Eloise pays attention to the music. And I think that what they're implying is if she had seen Marianne, she wouldn't have, like, she would have probably said hello because she's allowed to do that. But I don't know that she would have been very open because it hurts so much to open yourself up again to this love, to let it flare up again. That's not going to go
Mhm.
anywhere. So honestly, there is a possibility that she would have ignored her. And seeing her would have been painful and it would have reopened the conflict. Whereas seeing the music, to me, it was almost like she was watching a movie, like as if somebody had filmed their romance. And the music was this memory. She was rewatching their relationship like a recap. And she was content with just seeing the memory. The memory doesn't bring up conflict again. She doesn't have to make choices about a memory. And it was probably more peaceful because at first I was disappointed. I'm like, God damn, I wish that the two of them would have seen each other. Me being naive again, thinking they can run away with each other now. But instead,
Yeah.
she had this strong memory.
I don't know, just the way I thought of it was like that's probably one of the only times that she is able to like fully, or at least kind of relive any of that memory of them being together, because that's the song that Marianne played for her, on the harpsichord or whatever. And so I took it as like she's just so overwhelmed with all of this feeling that she can finally, for the first time, like let out because she's like married and with children now. So she has to do this in a really private, like isolated way, And so I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you think the scene itself provided enough closure for the movie? Because to me it did, because to me it's like, okay, well, if they can't be together, I guess the next best thing is to know that both of them are considering and still feeling the same way towards one another that they did. And I think I didn't think about this until now, but like this is major closure for Marianne because she's like seeing that this song is like so meaningful to this woman. And I just feel like that's just what you don't get with like modern love stories, is this like I come back years later and they still feel the same. Like what kind of movie does that? I feel like we just like force ourselves to just like move on or like think that it's not real or whatever.
I thought it was pretty great. I did, yeah. And I felt like I got closure from it, And I thought it was a really beautiful way to end it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was really wholesome. And in a way, Marianne, the whole time, she had an outlet. She had a creative outlet that would always connect her to Eloise, which was the painting. She
Mm-hmm.
always had something to keep in mind, like an activity to do that would remind her of Eloise. Whereas Eloise, I guess, they didn't establish until the very end that her outlet, her like safe space like that would be the orchestra. So, yeah, it was very intimate. I think it was good.
Cool.